So, this happened 20 years ago, but it's still one of the most vivid memories I have from my childhood. One night, my parents and my best friend's parents decided to take us out to a little neighborhood Italian restaurant for dinner. A cozy, quiet little place we'd been to a million times because it was walking distance from our apartment building. It was set in a strip mall that basically shut down after dark, except for a donut shop that stayed open late. Just behind the restaurant, a steep hill loomed up to form a hilly part of the city. Me, 8-year-old female, and my BFF, 10-year-old female, had finished our food and asked to go sit out front of the restaurant on the benches by the front door, within eyesight of our parents, but for a little autonomy. We were sitting, chatting, when suddenly a huge Rottweiler dog wearing a collar that was dragging a long broken chain behind it, like a real heavy chain, not a dog leash, comes walking past the restaurant, heading out of the parking lot, towards the busy street that bordered it. We were really surprised to see such a big, beautiful animal just abandoned in a parking lot at night, but we let him pass by since he seemed like he knew where he was going, and we weren't about to test to see if he was friendly. He looked like Cujo. About 5 minutes later, a man in an open-top Jeep drives by and stops right in front of us and says,
"Hey, did you girls see a dog pass through here? He was riding in my Jeep and just jumped off for no reason, and I can't find him. See? He even broke his chain."
And he held up a chain attached to one of the Jeep's roll bars. Wanting to be helpful, we were like, "Yeah, we saw him. He went that way," and pointed toward the busy road. But instead of following in the direction we had pointed, he parked the car right in front of us and said,
"Well, maybe he hasn't gotten too far. Would you mind helping me look?"
Red flag. So, dumb asses that we were, we said, sure, a lost doggy. What could be more potent to a little girl's heart? So the man says,
"Follow me."
and starts heading in the opposite direction that the dog went, and into a dark service alley behind the restaurant. So, on one side of the little walkway was the hillside slanting up to an 80-degree angle, and on the other side was the unlit industrial back of the restaurant. Just as we were following him back behind the corner of the restaurant, our parents happened to be exiting the restaurant. They didn't see us out front, so they started calling our names. We told him sorry we had to go. When we explained to our parents where we had been and how we'd been helping a dog recovery mission, my mom's head just about exploded. Both moms started screaming at us for being so stupid, and then screaming where was the man, who we hadn't seen since we left him in the alley behind the restaurant. They were gonna call the police and have him arrested, or kill him themselves. They didn't even believe us that we had seen a dog pass right in front of us, dragging a broken chain, and it matched his story. But in retrospect, why would an adult male ask two little girls to help him search for his dog down an unlit back pathway? I will never know, and I'm glad.
Gloria Jean's Creeper. Hello, I work for Gloria Jean's. It is a coffee place here in Australia that sounds a lot like Starbucks. That being said, I've never actually been to a Starbucks. Anyway, the chain is fairly popular around Australia. I've worked here for about 2 years, and started when I went to university, studying women's studies. I'm still working at Gloria Jean's, because the cost of living in Australia is so damn expensive, so I need it as a side job. Basically, I really need this job to help me stay afloat. I was serving in the morning rush of people who were waiting with various degrees of patience for their morning coffee, when I noticed a woman I hadn't seen before. I asked her for her order, and to be honest, I don't remember what it was or her name. It's hard to remember it all. The morning rush was over and she was still there. There was nothing weird about her, and she didn't give us any trouble like our Karen or Darren customers would. I asked her if she was okay, and she asked me how I was doing. I said I was okay, just the morning rush can be intense. She asked if she could ask me a few questions, and since it was quiet, and management likes when we have good rapport with customers, I agreed. She asked if I had a partner, and I said no, not at the moment. I swear her face lit up. So far, nothing was super weird. I apologized to her, and told her I wasn't looking. She didn't look fazed. Each day afterwards, she would show up and wanted to speak with me. It was getting annoying. She would wait there all day and follow me when I had my time off work. I told her I was on break. I needed space to eat and rest. She sat at the table across from me, staring and eating her food. She hadn't done anything violent, just really weird. I asked her to be left alone. She sulked, got up and left, but she was back again the next day. I talked to my manager about it, and he didn't take it seriously. I had to take my car to the repair shop to get it fixed, so I had to catch the bus instead. I hate taking public transport, but it was either that or an Uber. I wanted to save some cash. Anyway, she was on the same bus and got off at my stop. I had to sneak through different apartment blocks to find her, so she wouldn't know where I lived. I told my manager what happened, and finally he asked her to leave the store. I tried ignoring her. One day I had to work late, and I was walking out to where I parked my car. Two things were wrong. She was sitting on my car, and she was waiting for me by my car. I said, "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" She said she'd been waiting for me and had missed me. I told her to leave me alone and drove home. This was where I made a big mistake. I didn't realize she put an AirTag on my car and found out my address. Over the next couple of months, I was sure someone was looking through my windows. One of my plants was stolen. I'm not sure if it was her or not. And I noticed strange little bottles on my doorstep. It was incredibly strange. I didn't see her at my house until I realized I forgot to take the bins out. So I did that, came back inside. I closed and locked the door. Then I came back to see her sitting in my living room. I let out a scream when I saw her, and a maniacal grin on her face. She told me she'd been waiting so long for this. I ran to my phone and called the cops while she tried to take the phone from me, screaming at the top of her lungs that she loved me and I was hers. I was backed up into the kitchen when she grabbed one of the knives, threatening me with it, and I punched her to get her away from me. The crazy bitch started slicing into her own arms. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen in my life. My neighbors heard the screaming, and the police and ambulance came to take her away. She had lost a lot of blood, and surprisingly the cops got her to drop the knife. I don't know what I would have done if they were forced to kill her in my home. She was arrested, and I think she was sent to a mental health facility. I hope she is okay. I'm just happy to be done with it.
When I was 5, myself and my family lived in a bad neighborhood in Kansas City, Missouri in 1984-1985. My parents let me walk around and play by myself as long as I didn't go more than 3 blocks away. After school, I would go to my friend's house on the next block. Across from her house was an overgrown property with a chain link fence. There were so many trees, shrubs, and weeds, it was difficult to even make out the house there. At that age, I was terrified of dogs, and this large-sounding one would bark at me when I walked by. Each time, a man's voice would say,
"It's okay. He doesn't bite. You can pet him if you want to."
Each time I would say, "I'm not allowed to talk to strangers," and dash across the street to my friend's house. After we moved out of that area and back to the East Coast, That man was featured on the news. They had just arrested the Kansas City butcher after one of his victims got free and was running naked on the roof and screaming for help. All of his victims were male, but I can't help but think that in some parallel universe in which I did stop and talk or saw or heard something I wasn't supposed to. I read somewhere that in Robert Berdella's property were bones from 60 plus victims. They only got him for 6 because they couldn't make full matching skeletons from the assortment. Police thought it was a multi-generational thing within his family. He had a booth at a flea market that my dad would frequent a lot. He sold all sorts of oddities, mostly made of bone. Super glad my dad never made a purchase.
I hate hiking. Sent in by Fluffybloomers. I've never liked the outdoors or being in nature. I get a lot of shit for this. I prefer to stay inside in the nice AC, with all the comforts of home, rather than go outside where there is nothing but bugs, the heat, and people. I appreciate beautiful nature pictures and scenery, but that doesn't mean I want to be out in it. My sister, however, is the complete opposite of me. She loves the outdoors and always tries to go hiking whenever she can. I like seeing the pictures and hearing about her adventures, but that is as far as I will go. For her birthday, she asked me to go on an easy hike with her. We have different ideas about what an easy hike would be. She doesn't really ask much of me, so I told her I would give it a go, but to understand that I might not be able to do it. We were walking along the path and stopped regularly to take breaks. It was a beautiful place, but my feet hurt. It wasn't my thing. We had one more trail to go down before we go down another one in order to get back to the car park. My sister was talking about how we should do this again sometime. I just wanted to get through the day. We weren't alone on the trails. There were families with small kiddos walking by, couples, older people, and even the odd occasional single hiker. What I'm trying to say is that this trail isn't in the middle of nowhere, and generally has a reputation for being safe. I hurt my ankle somehow. I don't know how, but it ached. So my sister and I sat down for a while, chatted, etc. Before we knew it, it was dusk. So the sky had that pink hue to it, and it was colder now. We got up and started walking home. My legs and ankles hurt, so I was limping. My sister walked beside me, and I knew she was itching to go faster. She's one of those speedy people who like to walk really fast everywhere. We heard rustling from the trees and froze. Neither of us knew what it was, and held each other's hand only for a deer to come through. Like a cheesy part in a horror movie. We laughed. It was ridiculous. Then the birds, and just the forest, I guess, went really quiet. It was weird. My sister stopped and looked around to see what was causing it. She leaned close to me and whispered we had to go. Now. I wasn't going to argue with her. Instantly she was on her feet and pulled me up quickly. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me not to worry. Just come with her and don't waste any time. We walked at a fast pace, as fast as we could go with my injury, in order to get back to the car park, and she wouldn't say what was wrong. I didn't ask again, and figured she would tell me we were safe. I kept looking to see what was there, and as we were getting close to the car, she told me to hurry up and just get in the car when it was unlocked. When we got back to the car, she told me to get in right away, and the moment we were inside the locked doors, normally, when we got back to the car after doing something we would talk or just relax. This time, she drove off and didn't answer my question until we drove to the local McDonald's. She pulled into a parking lot and her hands were shaking. I gave her a moment before I asked her what happened. She told me she saw someone watching us in the forest from behind a tree. At first, I thought she was overreacting because there were a lot of people there. She told me he was naked and that he had a knife in his hand, and that was why she told me we had to go. I asked her how she knew it was a knife, and she said she saw the reflection and admitted that she couldn't be sure. It was bad to get out there before it was dark anyway, rather than being out there during nighttime. Maybe we were being stalked by a psycho or a murderer. I don't know. I haven't gone hiking since, and my ankle has gotten better. She has gone hiking again with friends, never going alone, but she has never tried to go back to that forest. She's told me she doesn't want anyone to stop her from enjoying nature.
I grew up out in the wooded country in Illinois, on a short, dead-end street, 10 plus miles from a town. There were about 7 houses in the area, spread out on 2.5-acre wooded lots, or larger, each. There were no large animals there. There aren't bears or similarly large animals in the region, and people didn't meander there or show up lost. Actually, lost folks or large animals wandering around never happened in the 20 years I lived there, so please keep that in mind. When I was a young girl in my early teens, I had a good guy friend a few years older than me who lived next door, Terry. Terry was allowed to go out with his friends much later than I was, and he would sometimes tromp over to my yard after getting home late and throw rocks at my window from the gravel outside to chat. My bed was right next to the window. I'd open the window and he'd whisper stories and generally talk for a bit. My second-story window faced our backyard and his house was to the side. I could see his house from my window over the shrub trees and walking path to his driveway. I'd often know if he was out. The light would be on over at the side door entrance, or I'd know if he were home. The light was off. One time during the summer, when my window was open, I heard a car in his driveway dropping him off. I was probably 14 years old, and it was around midnight. I heard Terry get out of the car and was talking to his friends. Soon his friends pulled away. I softly called out, as loud as I could without waking my parents, asking Terry to stop by and chat. He didn't respond, probably didn't hear me. Then I came up with the not-so-brilliant idea to sneak outside and scare him. I'd spent many years in the woods and learning how to blend in and be silent. As kids, we'd often sneak around and scare each other. So, I silently sneaked down from the second floor and out of my back garage door, which led to our backyard below my window, which led to Terry's house, off to the side through the gravel area, then through a small, well-worn path through the woods, about 25 feet long. My parents had put in a gravel pit around the back of the house, probably because nothing much grew due to the shade of the oak trees. There were 14-inch oak rounds set out as an uneven stepping path in the gravel, and if you stepped off the rounds, the crunch of the gravel rocks would give you away. I picked my way expertly and silently across the log rounds facing Terry's house. My eyes got accustomed to the dark, and I didn't see him. Also, at that time, I heard the door of his house close and the light going off signaling he went in, likely to bed. I waited a bit as I thought I saw something move in the woods between our houses, but not on the path we always use. If you didn't use the path, there were wild rose and raspberry plants that had thorns that were painful to walk through if you weren't careful. So I thought it was odd that he would be in the woods, but maybe he wanted to scare me like I was plotting to do to him. But I saw something human-sized and dark moving through the woods, slow and pausing every once in a while, like me. It was coming closer, and I definitely saw it, but it was strange in that it wasn't walking directly to my window to talk. Therefore, I hunched down and waited in silence, wondering if I could still startle him. I still thought it was Terry, and that he saw me sneak out and was trying to scare me. I watched the dark outline of a human figure moving, but then I would lose sight of it in the foliage. It seemed to be stalking slowly and listening and checking every few feet while hiding. So, after losing patience, I whispered to Terry, but he didn't answer. I got bored of hiding and crouching, so I quietly tippy-toed back to my garage door and went back inside silently, locking up as I went. I snuck back upstairs to my room above the area where I was just crouching. My window was open, and I definitely heard someone, or something, walking around in the yard. I whispered again for Terry out of my window, but got no answer. Then I heard someone or something fall and grunt pretty loudly in the window well, right below my window. It wasn't loud enough to wake my parents, but definitely loud enough I didn't mistake it, and it sent a shock of fear through me. If you aren't familiar with a window well, it's a semicircle hole connected to the house, dug out about 3 or 4 feet deep and reinforced with metal. It allows a basement window to be put in below the ground level, and the hole lets some natural light in. There is no way Terry would have fallen in the window well. We had been playing hide and seek and many outdoor games for years since we were young. We knew everyone's window wells and house footprints like the back of our hands. The grunt sounded humanish, but not like an animal. It also pulled itself out quietly, without a lot of thrashing. That's when I realized this wasn't a fun game, and someone was out there, and it wasn't Terry. I tried to look outside my window as best I could, but there was a screen on my window to keep the bugs out, so I couldn't lean my head out to see next to the wall of our house directly below me. I then heard the crunch of rocks and whatever it was stepping in the noisy gravel. Again, Terry would know where the log rounds were and would not step in the gravel. He knew my parents were pretty strict, and he was good at being quiet, like I was. Whatever it was stopped, and I held my breath. I pretty much sat there with my face pressed against the screen, 2 stories up, for probably half an hour. I never heard it leave, but I grew tired and eventually fell asleep on my bed, right next to the window. There are a few things I am certain of. It wasn't Terry. I asked him later, and he said he went to bed that night when he got home. He also would have no reason to lie. I'm pretty sure it wasn't one of our neighbors, and I can't think of any reason a person would be there. We had few neighbors, and only 2 other houses out of 7 had kids. Again, these 7 houses were spread out in 2.5 plus acres per home. There weren't any big animals in the area. As wooded as the whole area was, we only had some deer, but they were hunted and didn't come close to the homes. Plus, our dogs scared them away. Stranger in the woods. Let's not ever meet